Hello, everyone. I'm Ilana Varro, and we are here with the Sacred Self-Worth interview series. And I'm here with my girl crush, Danika Brysha. She's amazing. If you don't already know her, you will love her by the end of this series and interview. So, Danika, could you give us a little intro of who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. This is something that's really close to my heart, and I'm honored to be participating. So thank you. So I do a couple different things. I am a curve or plus size model with IMG Models. I've been doing that for about 8 years. And then a few years ago, I launched my own meal delivery business. So I'm the founder and CEO of Model Meals, which is a healthy meal delivery business, currently serving most of California, and then we're expanding right now as well. And then I am sort of not sort of, I'm a wellness personality. So I do coaching, especially around the space of self-care, body positivity, that sort of thing. And we'll work with a lot of entrepreneurs and then host a lot of wellness-centered events. So that's really where my passion lies. Ultimately, if I can help people to build their best possible life and do that through self-care and self-love, that is my mission. So that's where I put a lot of my energy today.
I love it. And that is why I was so excited to have you be a part of this, is because the whole concept of this series is that your life truly improves when you improve your relationship with yourself.
Absolutely.
And I know it's such a taboo topic. I know my clients, I'm a therapist, and clients are so sick of me hearing you got to love yourself. You got to accept yourself. It really starts with your relationship to you. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are externally focused, and the external will come when you work on the internal.
Right. It's backwards from what we think. It's the same way. It's the same mentality. I'm a big believer in the fact that our thoughts become things. It's you have to think all of this is the after effect. The before is the thoughts, Yeah. So absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. And I just love sharing that message. And I think we need more conversations around that because, again, it can be really taboo and people are so used to the, I'll believe it when I see it, but rather you'll see it when you believe it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And self-love and self-worth in general, I think can feel really abstract or vague to people. Yeah. So I love that you're kind of having this conversation to talk a little bit more about it. Because someone's I find, I'm when I found self-love, and the questions I constantly get are well, how did you find it?
Yeah. So. Yep. You don't just oh, it's here. I found it.
There it is. And an Easter egg.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So what is your definition of self-worth? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So I was thinking about that, obviously, as you mentioned it earlier. And I think for me, it's become that the underlying belief that I deserve respect and I deserve to live my fullest possible life. And for me, I practice self-worth. To me is a daily practice. It's that daily self-care practice. And that's my whole message. And what I really teach ultimately is people, I teach them how to create a self-care routine that helps them every single day incorporate something with self-care and start their day off with self-care in a way that says, I'm worth it. I deserve to fill myself up first, and then I can give that overflow to the rest of the people in my life. And so if I've learned anything, especially through my struggles with food and eating disorders and things, it's that the lasting change has only come from when I've made decisions out of love, meaning that every time I dieted because I hated my body and I wanted to change, the weight came back on, right? Or the lifestyle didn't stick. And then when I changed how I ate and my lifestyle, started meditating and journaling and all that sort of stuff, I changed it from a place of, no, I know my potential and I deserve to thrive. I know I'm not living at it right now. And I made changes from that place, and that lifestyle changed and stuck. So it's really powerful.
How did you come to that realization that something needs to change? Because self-worth, people struggle with that for, their entire lives. So what kind of landed for you that, wow, I need to do this for myself?
I just got some very clear vision of when I moved from LA to New York. I was modeling. I was with Wilhelmina Models in New York at the time, and always had grand Carrie Bradshaw visions of living in New York City, and knew I had to do it. So I moved there, and I was living with my brother on his couch for a month before I found my apartment. And during that month, it was December of 2013. And I love setting goals. I've always been into New Year's resolutions and that sort of thing. And so I remember having these like really like basically I would go out and like binge drink and eat halal at 3 a.m. on from a cart on the corner and wake up thinking like maybe the next day I'd be Oprah. You know what I mean? And it just doesn't add up, right? It's like, it's like if you want things to change, you have to change something. And so I do specifically remember that moment of being like, I know my potential and I know that that I'm not living at it. And so I'm going to do something about it. And change is going to feel different in your body. Like you should be uncomfortable when you're changing a habit, at least for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And so that was really powerful for me to make that initial shift. And it started with the Whole30, which was 30 is like a 30-day sort of clean eating thing that I did. And when I changed what I was feeding myself, just in terms of giving myself nutrition, it completely changed how my vessel worked, right? So my brain shifted and all of a sudden I had mental clarity, and that mental clarity allowed me to go do that inner work. So to a certain extent, yes, it is about food and exercise and that sort of thing. But I always tell people that's just getting your vessel positioned to do this like deeper, like more spiritual work. So if you start there, I think it's okay, because I really find it impossible. That's like the tricky thing working with a lot of people with food struggles for me is it does matter to a certain extent what you're eating. So how do we, and you probably have a lot better answers than I do, but it's how do we help you change that without the obsession being there, but also position your vessel in a way that we're going to be able to really absorb the deep inner work and get quiet in our mind and have that clarity. So
it's a lot for people to wrap their head around, because they think, you know, I'm going to eat differently with the purpose of I want to change my body, like the outside look.
Yes.
And that's where the obsession and, you know, the unhealthy relationship to food comes in. But when you're purely eating from a place of I'm listening to my body, I'm connecting to it, I'm actually aware of like, ooh, I need more like vegetables. I need to like clear out the toxicity. I need, you know, and it's not about restriction, like you can never eat this, you can never eat that. But it's like, if you truly listen to your body, it's saying, give me things that make me feel good. It's not saying, you know, give me all the processed and overly, you know, fried. Like that's super fun at times, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, the more connected you become to your body, you start to really hear the messages.
Yeah. And life gets so much easier. That's the thing. You know, I spent most of my life, I was not someone who was vulnerable. I was not someone who talked about feelings. I was really someone who's oh my God. Like,
I can't picture that.
It's so funny. If you read even like I was reading what people wrote when people wrote in yearbooks, I don't know if they still do that, but people wrote in my yearbooks, like, I'm not going to get too mushy here because I know you hate feelings, but like, and people would actually say that to me. And I was very like, I was always very cheery and put on a happy face and was like, you know, had a lot of friends, but it was this mask I had. Not that I wasn't happy, but it was just a mask I was putting on in an effort to not let people see any of the funky stuff, you know? Yeah. And so I did a lot of therapies and a lot of work to get to a point where I could actually feel my feelings and stay in my body and use them as a compass. When I first went into this one therapy I did, I had no idea that feelings had like felt different ways in your body. Like I was so disconnected from my body that I was just searching outside of myself for answers. And I think that's a big issue today in our culture, is that we're so used to looking for our answers outside of ourselves when really they're all inside of ourselves. You know, you can work with a professional to help draw them out that can ask you the right questions, but we have all our answers. The problem is there's so much noise and there's so much like distraction. And so when I finally was able to do that work and learn to start sitting with my feelings and letting them move through me and learning from them, I realized, oh my gosh, I have this compass inside me that makes living my life so easy. Like it makes saying yes and no to things so clear. There's not that like, and so I think that's where anxiety stems from, is this disconnection. You know, so many people have anxiety these days. I think it's really a big part of it is this disconnection from our inner self and our inner compass and our inner guidance, I guess.
Yeah. And a lot of times starting to listen to that compass can be really uncomfortable, you know, especially when you're aware of like, oh, you know, sadness feels like this in my body, anxiety feels like this. When the clouds kind of part and there's awareness of like, oh, this is what this feels like, the automatic thing is like, I don't want to feel that.
Yeah.
So can I ask what you did to be okay with going into the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it took me time. So it got worse before it got better. So when I changed how I ate and then started doing this mindfulness work, what happened was I changed what I was eating, right? And then all of a sudden I would still see myself binging, and I was binging on healthy foods. I was binging on almonds and eggs and like good foods that were Whole30, you know? And I realized, I remember the moment where it clicked for me, and I was like, oh, it's not about the food. It's something deeper. It's, you know, food is just my drug. It's someone else's alcohol or gambling or sex or whatever. And so I remember this, once I acknowledged that, I was able to think, okay, I'm going to start paying attention to when I'm reaching for food when I'm not hungry, and try and start listening. Like, instead of eating, I'm going to try and journal and write down what I'm feeling. And so things would come out of my pen when I started journaling that I had no idea I was feeling. And that was the first way I started getting in touch with my feelings. And the truth is, I spent a few years really binging on healthy stuff, but still binging, still using food to numb. It took me, that was the hardest thing. And that's still to date the hardest thing for me to tackle. And so every time that comes up, like last night it came up, it's not like it's gone for me, but last night it came up. And what I've learned now is usually, or almost all cases for me, that's because I'm overworking or I'm stressed out. And I have sort of like a stop, drop, and chill sort of mentality, where if my body is like craving for food and I can't turn the voice off, and I know I'm not physically hungry, I know my body isn't asking for physical sustenance like a meal, then I'm like, okay, there's answers in this, but the most important thing is that I give myself that self-love to rest, you know, rather than shoving it down and continuing on with emails sort of thing. So I think early on it was just, you know, it was hard. It got worse before it gets better. And so all of a sudden, if you've spent your entire life numbing your feelings, and all of a sudden you've got this bravery and to really step up and start feeling them, it's really hard for some time. But what you learn is that your feelings won't kill you. And the more you're able to push through and sit with them and feel them and let them dissolve as they do, and they come up and out of your body, then the easier it gets every time to remind yourself, this is uncomfortable. No, I don't want to be in my body right now, but I will move through this. Tomorrow will be a different day, or maybe it'll last for a few days or even a few months, but it will go away. Life has its ups and downs. And I guess for me, learning to really expect those ups and downs with emotions, with moods, with everything, has given me so much like optimism with it, because I know it's only a matter of time before it dissolves.
Yeah, I love that. I love the stop, drop, and chill. That's a great rule. It's so true. It's absolutely true. It's like, wait, again, don't seek external food, gambling, sex, whatever.
Yeah.
Drop in.
Yeah, totally. So, lay on the couch, turn off the email.
I lay on the floor, roll out the yoga mat, lay on the floor.
I love it. I love that. And just feel. Right? Because those feelings have messages for us. Yeah. And again, the more we listen to those messages, the easier it is to navigate our life, the easier it is to make choices that support us. When I wasn't in touch with my feelings, I would make choices based on how I thought I should respond to any given situation, not how I actually felt in a given situation. So sometimes that was fine because I could interpret what I should be feeling and I was right. But sometimes it wasn't. And I said things that I didn't mean, or I committed to something that didn't spark joy in me or anything like that. So I think we realize that it's actually harder to live your life without using your internal compass. But we kind of, it feels a lot easier to just numb it out and do that, but it's really not.
And we think we know, you know, we're not trusting of our wisdom to reveal new knowledge. We think we're right. We think we know what we need, what we want, you know? And so as you were talking, I was thinking that there must have been something that you saw for yourself on the other side of self-love, self-acceptance. What was that what were you going towards? Why did you know this was important? What was on the other side of it?
That's a really good question. So probably a couple things. One was I was so determined to stop using food as a drug. Like I was so fed up with my relationship with food and the binging and the isolation and all that sort of stuff. And so healing that was the biggest thing for me. I remember reading like Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly, and just really starting to understand a little more about feelings and vulnerability, and that I couldn't numb exclusively. Like if I was numbing all the bad stuff, I was also numbing the potential for love and depth and relationships. And I was craving that depth. And so I think I knew also that in terms of if I wanted a romantic relationship with someone on a deeper level, I had to be willing to get vulnerable. I had to be willing to put myself in a place where that person could hurt me. To feel the depth of love on the other side. And so that was a really big part of it for me, I think.
I love that. And I would love for you, that's a great little transition to part of your life that I wanted to cover is
Yeah.
your relationship. You received this amazing man, and I haven't met him yet, but just your whole, Instagram, I follow like a little fangirl, and
He's
I'm like,
pretty dreamy.
so cute.
Thank
So,
you.
so wonderful together. So was that able to come into your life from this?
Yeah. It's interesting. That happened pretty much right when I finished this therapy I was talking about. It was a therapy called ISTDP, Intensive Short-Term Dynamic Psychotherapy.
Cool.
And it's like it's not meant to be like ongoing talk therapy. It was really about learning how to feel your feelings, processing any junk that is like left down there that you haven't properly dealt with, moving through those emotions, getting that up and out, and just learning how to stay in your body. And so once you do that, your therapy is done, and I had just finished that really probably a month or two before. And just, I was in the depths of building model meals, and I was not, I'm sober, and I wasn't like going out meeting people places and stuff. And so we actually met on a dating app on Tinder, which is so far from glamorous, but real, I guess.
I love it.
And I met him, and he was just this incredible man. And he has a real story. He's a recovered drug addict. He put in so much work on himself to do the same kind of work that I'd been doing for the last 2 years. So he was sober, and part of most 12-step recovery programs are really like doing an inventory of yourself, learning to touch base with your feelings, going to therapy, like all this work that I had done. Essentially, the work I was doing was essentially as a recovering food addict. So we realized how parallel that was. And he was just so open, and like he was this beautiful, strong, masculine looking man with the most like sensitive heart, and so communicative about his feelings and no ego. And I was just sort of like drawn to him. And so it's been really incredible for me because for a long time, I ran with the notion that guys didn't like girls like me. Like I was like I had all these like hot best guy friends, but no, it wasn't dating men, and really felt like that wasn't for me. And it had so much to do with my body images and my self-worth at that point. And so when I started putting in that work and figuring out what my self-worth was and realizing how worthy I was and how enough I was, I started putting that out into the universe, and the universe it matched me. And so we met up, and we've been together a little over a year now, and just a soulmate, like in every sense of the word, and of course, do I know that it's a forever thing? I have no idea. None of us can say that, but we just line up, and we treat each other with such respect and connection, and it really just feels really like a beautiful relationship. So I feel really lucky to have him.
I love that. Do you think you could have had this relationship had you not owned your self-worth or let your self-worth be, shown to the world?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the thing with self-worth, like with that vulnerability too, and showing yourself to the world, is that actually is what breeds connection. We think so backwards about it. But really for me, when I started sharing about my eating disorders and my struggles and my journey, that's when people started like coming to me in the masses, because they were seeing so much of their own struggles in me. And so I think like that vulnerability, that humanness, that ability to open up my heart and let someone in more deeply, that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been vulnerable enough to open up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know people, it still blows my mind that vulnerability is viewed as a weakness.
I know.
People, I'm like, that is the most brave, strong, powerful thing you could do, is to be authentic and vulnerable and speak your truth, even if it's not, pretty or what, the social media world is showing you. It's just, it breeds connection. You put it perfectly.
Absolutely. And for men especially, like I feel like women are a little more nurtured in feeling their feelings and communicate, but for men, like it's so important. And Billy, my boyfriend, actually today, he's launching essentially his new brand, which is mindful masculinity, and really working with men to create a more mindful like existence and mindful relationships, mindful eating, mindful self-care, all that sort of stuff. And working with men to be able to realize how strong it is to talk about feelings and to be vulnerable. And so I'm really excited for him, because that's a new thing for him. And it's so important. And I think men need those sort of icons and our mentors as well. So
Absolutely. I love that. I'm so excited for that. Is that going to be a local thing, an online thing?
So it's really just for him rebranding to start so that he
Cool.
can share content in that space as he formulates what he wants to do. He does work with a few clients just volunteer right now. He's coaching a couple men just as he gets like in the groove.
Beautiful.
But we want to do events together, and I want to be able to have co-ed events that speak to everyone. And so yeah, I really want to empower him to do that. And he's just perfect for it. Like he's a really incredible man. And I think a lot of the qualities he has coming from him as masculine looking as he is, will be really powerful for men to realize like masculinity is not strength and like shutting off and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like or bravado. It's truly like a much softer.
Yeah.
Softer ends up being more powerful.
Yes. 100%. Yeah.
So I imagine the people watching are asking like, okay, this is great. How do I get there?
Yeah.
And, again, people are always like, what can I do? And a lot of this that you're talking about is being a certain way. Mm-hmm. But do you have any sort of suggestion for people? Because people are doers. They want to hear, what can I do? What can I do?
Yeah.
What can they do to get to this place?
Totally. I'm such a big believer in fake it till you make it. So one of the things I work with my coaching clients on all the time is manifesting and affirmations. So one thing that can be really, really powerful, I get a message or two every single day about people who are like, okay, I was not into the affirmations, but I decided to try it. And oh my gosh, they work. I got the job. I met the person. It's just over and over and over. And so practicing affirmations every morning. If you can sit down and write 3 affirmations. And what does that look like? Well, it kind of depends what you're struggling with. So for me, if I'm struggling with food and body, I might write, I have an incredibly healthy relationship with food. I love my body. I am worthy of respect and love. I am bright light. I make choices that support my healthiest self. When I was struggling with money, it might say, I am rich, I am abundant, money flows to me faster than I can keep track of, anything like that. So practicing affirmations. I'm a big believer, and I have a really quite more intensive self-care checklist that I do and teach to most of my clients and at my workshops, which is my self-care checklist. And this is basically a 30-minute to an hour sort of thing you can do in the morning, where it's basically a checklist of all these sorts of things. So affirmations, gratitude. I write a biography from my future every day. So one of the big things is we just need to decide where we want to go. We don't have to figure out how we're going to get there. So for me, I write a biography from 5 years in the future, or a year in the future, or whatever, that says Danika Brysha is, and it's about my dream life. And it says all the things that I hope that someone's going to be reading about me in 5 years. Amazing. And I want those things to be true. So it's that practice. So if you're finding it really hard to find that and cultivate that self-worth naturally, doing this self-care and these affirmations and sort of faking it until you make it will change your mindset every day. If you sit down and you say and write those things every day, you will believe them to a certain extent at some part. And even if you're only believing them for 3 seconds of your day, that's more than you were yesterday. And that is powerful. It still makes a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think patience, comes to mind as you're talking also, that this may be an overnight shift for some people. However, I know for me, and it sounds like for you, it's been years building and building. Yeah. And there's still so much more growth, but you kind of get to a place where it becomes exciting and you love the feelings going up and down, and you kind of watch yourself surf the waves rather than just like be buried in it.
Yeah.
I mean, call me crazy, but I think it's kind of fun.
I love it. It's like when you get to be, you're your project all the time. And it's not that there's always something to fix, but there is always, that's the excitement of our human life, is that we can constantly be growing and evolving and that sort of thing. So it makes it really fun. It's like a game. And I totally agree with you. For me, all these lifestyle changes have happened really gradually. My whole method when I work with clients is we're incorporating one thing each month. So if they decide like, I want to have a meditation practice, that's the one thing we're doing for the month of March. And they're only allowed allowed to say, I'm meditating for 5 minutes each day. So my whole method is like, okay, if you can, like maybe you do 15, maybe you do 30 one day, great. And you feel like a rock star, but we're making lifestyle changes and habits. They change through empowerment, and versus like doing something that feels like really overwhelming. I want people to set themselves up for success in whatever way they can. So if you're going to change a new habit and commit to doing it every day for the month, then you really have to commit to something that is really digestible and doesn't change your life all at once, because it won't stick. So that's what I really work with people on, is creating habits and adding new things over over a longer period of time, until you eventually have this new lifestyle and you no longer need all this willpower, because it happens automatically.
Yes, definitely. It becomes the new norm.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I imagine that this message is hitting home for people that have an inkling that I need to really connect to myself more. I need to like up my self-care game.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say to people that are watching and they're like, well, I just don't think I'm worth like connecting to my self-worth. Like, who am I?
Yeah.
To own my worth, to accept myself, to love myself.
Totally. I think, I work with a lot of moms, a lot of nurses, a lot of people who care for other people every day. And they are really great at caring for others, but not for themselves. So I think if you can twist the narrative in your head about self-care and realize that it is selfish not to practice self-care, because your kids deserve an energized, healthy, vibrant, happy version of you. So do you want to give your kids like a crappy version of you that's tired and exhausted and burnt out and unhappy? Or do you want to take an hour in the morning to fill your cup so that all these people you're taking care of get the best of you? So basically, if you're in a position that you're really feeling like, I don't deserve this, I can't find that, don't make it about you then. Make it about the other people in your life, and decide if they deserve the crappy version of you. I almost said, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. If they deserve the crappy version of you, or if they deserve the brightest version of you, and then change from that space. And then eventually you'll realize that you start doing a lot of that stuff for yourself as well. But I think that's a really powerful way to shift that narrative if you are having trouble with it.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Thanks.
So how can people find you?
Yeah, so I do most of my sharing on Instagram. So that's my main social media platform. My Instagram handle is just my name, @Danika Brysha. And then if you go to my website, danikabrysha.com, there's all the information there about my coaching practices and my workshops that I do. You can link to model meals there and read a little bit more about my story. I also have a blog post there about the self-care checklist. So it's not super intensive, but it gives you enough information to start one. I'm working on a book right now, and something that will help people do that in a much better way. But so that's mainly it. And then Model Meals, which is my meal delivery business, is just at Model Meals, and then modelmeals.com. So
awesome.
if you want good food and you want it, high quality, and it's really affordable, and really it makes a really big difference what you eat. So it's been really powerful for me, especially as someone in recovery from food addiction and obsession, to not think about food all day and to have these healthy meals in my fridge and to portion control. Like, it's been very empowering for me to be able to use that to eat intuitively, to pick what I want in those moments, to still tune into my body when I'm going to eat, but also to feel like there's not so many choices and decisions I have to make that really drain my energy. So it's been really, that's why it's I'm so passionate about this meal delivery business, especially, is because it's healed the obsession that for me has been lifelong. So
yeah, that's awesome. And that seems like that was kind of the starting point of your too, was the food. So absolutely.
Like, it's really hard to do this work if you are foggy and tired and numb, if you're taking a bunch of pills that are changing the way, I was on Adderall for quite some time, which was actually the first reason I started using. That was why I wanted to get off Adderall, because I noticed it changed my moods and my creativity. That's when I decided, I read some books and realized that food could help me with that. And food changed my energy, my focus, more than any pill ever did. Like, the way I can focus, the way my attention, and my productivity with lifestyle changes were so much more powerful than any pill. So that's kind of where that started. So I think we have to realize that if we're not sleeping, if we're not eating well, if we're not getting some healthy movement, if we're taking things that are fogging us up, the benefits of that other more like spiritual, deep self-work are lessened. And so I think that's where we have to start, is the physical vessel, tune it, and then we can start doing that deeper work that's a little bit below the surface.
Love it. Yeah, so spot on. I love it. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for being a part of this and sharing
Thanks
your
for having
message.
me.
Yes. And as you were saying, I remembered also, like, following the right people on Instagram, I know for me has also been really beneficial. And so for everyone listening, go follow Danika, because
Thank you.
You share so much of yourself, and it's so helpful to see, you know, people that you really connect with and you like their messaging, and it's uplifting and it's body positive and it's accepting. So, you know, even if you're not in a place of like, oh, I'm worthy, like, go follow people that view themselves as that, because guaranteed something will click. The right little bits of information will land, and you will start to notice those changes too. So thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself so vulnerably.
Yeah, well, I think we don't realize we have power over what we consume. That was how I changed my body image perspective, was when I became a plus size model, I started filling my news feeds with all these women with cellulite and curves, and that became my normal, right? So we can do that with anything that we consume. We can really take control. So yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Great point. Great point. Yeah, of course. You're welcome. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and stay tuned for more.
Bye.
Bye.